I want to come to Matthew 28, and in Matthew 28, I want to just mention a few truths that there are to close the book of Matthew for the purposes of these teachings, but I do want to concentrate on the Great Commission that God gives at the end of Matthew 28, because last night I was woken up at midnight and didn't get sleep anymore. But God was telling me about a certain truth here that I want to share with you. But basically, Matthew 28 is at the end of the Sabbath. The first day of the week is a Sunday. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary come to the sepulchre, and there was a great earthquake. For the angel of the Lord descended from heaven, came and rolled back the stone from the door. And those of you who have been to Israel, you know that this tomb is carved out of rock, and there's a little, what you might call, a little gully down which the stone used to roll. And then the angel rolled that back and opened up the tomb, and when the angel saw the women, he said, "Fear not, for I know that ye seek Jesus, which was crucified. He's not here, he's risen. Come see the place where the Lord lay." And those who have been there and seen where he laid, you know, we have been there, and we had led a tour there. And after the people had left, I wanted to go in alone. And I said to the Lord, when I was there alone in a tomb, I said, "What do you want to be recognized for?" And I saw across the tomb, there's a kind of shall I say, a kind of little table there where the body of Jesus was, and kind of shelf, and in beautiful white letters, the word meekness. "I want to be known for my meekness," he said. "And come and see the place where the Lord lay. And go quickly, tell his disciples that he's risen from the dead. And behold, he goeth before you into Galilee. There you shall see him. Lo, I have told you." Now, obviously, Matthew contains some portions of the story, Mark others, Luke others, John others. But we're looking in Matthew, and they departed quickly from the sepulchre with fear and great joy. And they ran to bring his disciples word. But as they went to tell his disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, "All hail." And they came and held him by the feet and worshipped him. And there you see the Lord appeared to these women, and they received him. And he said, "Be not afraid. Go tell my brethren that they go unto Galilee, and there they shall see me." Now, don't forget, something else was happening, you see. The chief priests and the Levites, were very concerned that there would be a rumor that Jesus had risen, and they believed that the disciples would try and take the body of Jesus. So they had asked Pontius Pilate in chapter 27 and verse 65 if they could have a guard over that tomb so that the body would not be removed. But here the great earthquake, and the priests were very concerned. Those who had been the keepers showed unto the chief priests all the things that were done. And they gave large money unto the soldiers, saying, Say ye, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we slept. Now, I want you to see what wickedness does. Here they have irrefutable proof that Jesus rose from the dead, yet they do not want to accept it. And I have known people after people, who have a desire to believe a certain thing which is erroneous, and then afterwards, when it's irrefutably proven that they are wrong, they still want to hold to error. And that is a situation with the priests, you see. They wanted to hold to error. It's a terrible thing. Terrible thing. They wanted to hold to error. And so here they gave large sums of money to the soldiers, saying, Say ye, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we slept. If you've ever been in the military, you know that no guard dare sleep. They have to be on watch. They have to be awake. The commanding officer must visit them to ensure that they are awake. And here they're doing what no soldier would ever do, sleep on duty. And he said, if this come to the governor's ears, we will persuade him and secure you. And they took the money and did as they were taught. And they knew that it was wrong. But you see how often people are willing to do those things that are wrong for other reasons. Well, we come now to verse 16, where we find the 11 disciples went away into Galilee, into a mountain where Jesus had appointed them. Now look at verse 17. Now this is 11 disciples. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Can you believe that? Some of the 11 doubted. They doubted, and here they were looking at him. And how we have to overcome unbelief. Actually looking at Jesus, they doubted that they were seeing him. Well, Jesus came and spoke unto them and said, All power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore and teach all nations. And this is the point that I want to emphasize today. The Great Commission. Teach all nations. Now last night, I was awoken at midnight. And the rest of the night I did not sleep. The Lord was speaking to me about certain things. But one of the things that he was speaking to me about was teachers. Now, we know that we have the privilege of having excellent teachers in Zion. And these excellent teachers are, generally speaking, our pastors who go and who teach in many nations. And we're very thankful for them. Now, my attitude is this, you see, that here we have our pastors with tremendous experience and, the blessing they are when they come to these countries. People listen to them. People are very grateful to them. And they have a tremendous impartation of truth. But then the Lord was speaking to me last night because I'm thinking the people that we send out, have to be as well endowed as these pastors like Pastor Tucker, has a church, and he's had this church for I don't know how many years, but he has the ability to impart truth, and I'm seeking all the time to have people like him sent to the foreign field. And the Lord has been speaking to me during the night about teachers. And I just want to speak a little bit about teachers. And essentially this is what he's saying. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 28, it speaks of first an apostle, then a prophet, then a teacher, thirdly a teacher. Now that is taken from Ephesians chapter 4, where we have the fivefold ministry: apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. And I have been seeking to send our pastor teachers to various countries because of their expertise and the wealth of knowledge and riches of the word that they have. But the Lord was speaking to me during the night, and this is essentially what he was saying. He said this way: look, an apostle can be a prophet, but a prophet not necessarily is an apostle. A pastor can be a teacher, but a teacher not necessarily a pastor. And then he brought back certain thoughts to me. We have a friend who looked after the TV for us, and his wife has been a teacher. She's just retired for 34 years, and for 34 years she was in the same classroom in, I think, Waverley High School. And the Lord brought this back to me. Now, he said that lady sat in her classroom, and for 34 years, 34 groups of children came into that classroom. She taught them and went on their way. She was essentially one who taught a curriculum, and that was it. And he said, that is essentially what a teacher is. That a teacher is someone who, shall I say, just gives a lecture, and afterwards that person, you see, may not have all the experiences of a Pastor Tucker, but knows the curriculum. And he said, that is where a teacher is. And then he took me back to my own school days, where a teacher, one of my teachers, very much impressed me. Her name was Miss Nolan, which doesn't mean a thing to you, but anyway, it did come back to me, Miss Nolan. And she was an interesting little person. She did one thing, and that one thing apprehended me. She was our history teacher. And she came in with a trunk like Suzette has, these, what do you call them? Handbags, colossal handbag. She had this colossal handbag. Well, the class started with her putting her hand into a handbag and trying to find her fountain pen, which took a few moments. But then after that, she opened her notebook and then started to dictate to us. This was a history class. And as she dictated, she wrote down in her notebook what she was dictating. And that made a tremendous impression upon me. And I realized what she was doing. She was indeed thinking of the future when her brain might not be so alert. And later on, she would just have to read those notes. And I thought, what a wonderful thing. There she is, conserving all her knowledge. And she'll have it for later years. Well, then remembering that, I've thought myself, well, so I've put mine in book form. But this is the point. All she did was sit at that table, dictate. She was a teacher. She would repeat that year after year. But she would impart a curriculum knowledge to the children who came in. And the Lord started to deal with me. In Psalm 68 and verse 11, it said, the Lord gave the word, great was the company that published it. Now that company, or army as it is called, is in the feminine. And the Lord brought to my attention the fact that He wants many of you girls and ladies to be teachers. Now, in order to be a teacher, you must have a certain amount of knowledge that you have, if I could say that in note form, so that you can give to others. You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to have another ministry. But what you do have to have is a curriculum. You have to have content. You have to give something to that class year after year. And my concept of sending pastors, of course, obviously is necessary in some circumstances. But God is going to have such a harvest that He showed me during the night that He needs teachers. He needs teachers. And what I want you girls and ladies to do is this, to ask the Lord, well, is my calling to be a teacher? You don't have to have the background of a pastor to be a teacher. The Lord made that very clear to me. He said, but you have to have notes. You have to have content. You have to have, like Miss Nolan, if I could say that, something to give to each class year after year. And this friend of ours, his wife, 34 years in the same classroom. They came in, they went out, but she gave them the same amount of knowledge. And I want you to think about this, that, a teacher is someone who has knowledge of a certain, shall I say, facts, and gives that out constantly and lifts the people that come to hear her from the position they are to a higher position, and then they go on. Miss Nolan was a history teacher. She probably knew nothing about geography, nothing about science, nothing about mathematics. But it didn't matter. She wasn't a mathematic teacher. She wasn't called to teach science, biology, no, calculus, no. She was appointed to teach history. Now, I feel very stirred about this, that I want you to pray and ask the Lord, what specific subject do you want me to know that I may impart unto others? And the point is this: in the secular field, it's clear that one basically specializes, and so one does in the spiritual. The thing is this: you don't try and teach everything, but you feel that God is drawing you to a specific subject. And that you must know, and you know by teaching. I tell you, there's nothing that helps you to learn than to teach. And you know exactly what you do know when you try and teach. And I want you to meditate upon this. You see, he says, go therefore and teach all nations. Verse 20, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. Well, Lord, what have you commanded me? What speciality have you learned, ordained for me? I mean, my vision is Zion, you see. I mean, that's what I teach, you see. I teach Hebrews, teach a few other things, but essentially, I know where I'm going. You see, that is my message. See, that is my message over the years. That's my message wherever I go. I teach, you see, what God has commanded me. Now, I want you girls and ladies, here's Sister Joyce. What a wonderful role model she is for girls and ladies of all ages. You see, she has imparted to these people in Bolivia a message. They then reproduce that message, and they go where she will perhaps never go. But because she has imparted that message to them, they reproduce it. And we don't know how far that message goes. But what a wonderful role model, you see, Sister Joyce is. And here she is, teaching. And one of the things that the Lord dealt with us about was this. He said, don't count the numbers, it's whom you teach. And I've given this illustration before, but when I was in Kuala Lumpur, the pastor of this church of 5,000 said, I was a pupil of yours, but you didn't know me, did you? And I said, no, I didn't. He said, I was stuck at the back of your class. I never opened my mouth. I never asked a question. But, he said, I'm a pupil of yours. You see, it's not how many we teach, who we teach. He reproduces that to 5,000 people. And so I want to leave and close Matthew 28 with the Great Commission. Go teach all nations. What am I to teach? All things whatsoever I have commanded you. What have you commanded me, Lord? What is the message? Paul said to the Corinthians, you are our epistle, known and read of all men. And people look at you, you see, and they read the message that God has placed within you. Now, this Miss Nolan, she was a very wise lady, and I was really apprehended by what she did. She made good notes, and good note-taking is essential. We thank God in Zion that we have given you books, but you need to make them your own too, you see, and ask God, I'm speaking especially to the girls and ladies because, you don't have to be a pastor to be a teacher. You think a teacher can sit in a classroom, they come in, they go out. But you have something to give to them. So I want you to ask the Lord, Lord, what have you commanded me? What in particular is the message you want me to teach others? And Abraham Lincoln said something very interesting. People were saying, oh, this fellow has suddenly appeared on the scene. He suddenly surfaced. And Abraham Lincoln said, no, not really. He was preparing himself that when the time came and the door opened, he was ready. And, God opens the door for those who are prepared. He opens the door for those who are prepared. Before I went to France, my first missionary appointment, I spent at least 18 months just studying. I had no open door whatsoever. And I belonged to a tiny little church and essentially virtually no opportunity. But I spent 18 months studying, 18 months making notes, and then the door opened and I was ready. And the amazing thing, when I went to France, they all recognized me as a teacher, which they didn't have in France. They didn't have teachers. Why? Because I had prepared myself. And so I want you to listen very carefully, to what I'm saying in closing. Prepare yourself. A teacher has to be prepared. And now is the time to say, Lord, what is the message that you have for me to give to others? And if you will concentrate on that, and God sees you're ready, he'll open the door at his timing, like he did for me. And all tonight, from midnight until about 7:30, the Lord was talking to me about teachers, and essentially about girls and ladies, because that company is feminine. That company is feminine. My impression is that the majority of teachers in schools are not our gender. They're the other gender, the feminine gender. Isn't that interesting? Interesting, isn't it? The majority of teachers, do not belong to our gender. They are feminine. Is it not natural that the Lord would say, great is the company of girls? Well, he doesn't say girls or ladies, but it's interesting, isn't it? That's the force where the teachers are. So I want you to meditate upon these things and be like Miss Nolan, make many notes, and ask the Lord, what is my particular message that you would give? Because this friend of ours, his wife, 34 years, she just taught the same thing. Well, there you are. Okay? So may God grant that you will be a teacher in the army of God, publishing the word that God gives to you personally. Amen?